Lads, lasses, and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the channel. I'm Mono from Mono CFC, and welcome to Season 2 of Feeling Blue. Let's go. Alright, welcome back to another retroactive Feeling Blue. I was not really feeling talking about this game when it happened last night. It was late, and I was kind of fed up. But we're going to talk about it now, and this was obviously, let's give an overview. This was obviously a less than adequate performance, but the main thing is that we got 3 points. And to be honest, I don't care if our performances are terrible every single week, as long as we get 3 points. It completely doesn't matter. I think where we can analyze performances is in where performances where we kind of perform well but don't get the 3 points, so we can analyze that. But in a situation where we're getting the 3 points, it doesn't really matter to me. I'll take it. We are now in 7th place, I believe, before the other fixtures that go ahead today go on, and that's higher than we were and up until 31st game week of last season, so can't really complain there. We've got more points in the first 4 games of this season than we had in the first 8 of last season, so we're definitely improving. And obviously we had to face Man City in there as well, so that's pretty good. We got one of those games out of the way. I don't want to dwell too much on the negatives of this game because there are quite a lot, and in general our performance, as I said, was not very good. But I'm gonna rattle off the bads first. I usually go from left to right and then kind of finish on goods. I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off, as it were, and hit the bads first, and then we'll talk about the goods later. So I think the first thing we want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about this first because it's the big elephant in the room, and I have to do it every single time, and it annoys me that we have to do it every single time. It's for Anthony Taylor, because this guy is just genuinely so incompetent at his job. I genuinely cannot believe that he still gets to referee high-level Premier League games. I still can't believe that he gets to referee every single fucking Chelsea game that happens in this day and age. I cannot believe that his bias is not kind of stamped down on. And I think even though I feel like his officiating was generally terrible, even though I think his officiating was generally biased, I think that even Bournemouth fans can be annoyed with him, considering we've just got the news today that both clubs are going to be fined for the amount of yellow cards they got. This was a game that had the most Premier League yellow cards in history, and for that to happen in a game where there wasn't very many fights, there wasn't very many bad tackles particularly either, just goes to show how much of an egotistical loser this guy is, in the fact that he always tries to make every single game about himself. I spoke about this last time when we had Jared Gillett, who had a similar awful performance. That referees nowadays need to be anonymous. They need to not have their names out in the media, because they just always try and make the games about themselves nowadays. They want to get into the headlines. He's a prime example of this. He completely ruined this game. He didn't send off Lewis Cook. He definitely should have. There was a very, really bad tackle from Lewis Cook when he was already on a yellow. Should have been a second yellow, wasn't. I can understand some decisions that he makes. He gives a penalty for Sanchez's tackle, which, to be honest, by letter of the law, I will say that it should be given as a penalty, but in my opinion, I don't see how Sanchez can stop that from happening. He just stands his ground and Evan Nilsson runs into him. Not really sure what he can do there. We got, as I said, so many fouls that were given as regular fouls for Bournemouth were instantly punished for Chelsea, and it's kind of ridiculous that we saw in like the first 8 fouls, we were kind of counting down as it was happening. First 8 fouls for Chelsea resulted in 6 yellow cards, and then the first 14 for Bournemouth resulted in less than 6. It was very, very... And maybe this is because he's influenced by the way that Bournemouth play, because they are very snappy. They do like to go into challenges, but like, you can't referee the game in different ways for different teams. He has to be consistent, and he wasn't. He was just giving out yellow cards for no reason, and genuinely, this was one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a referee. I don't want to talk about it more because, again, this is just another situation of just a terrible referee trying to make the game about themselves, and I'm not going to let him detract from the fact that we won this game, because I can tell well, he's going to be absolutely seething the fact that we got that late winner, and that makes me happy. You know what? I hope that he's rolling around in his... He was staying up late at night, not being able to sleep because he couldn't screw us over enough to stop us from winning. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Let's talk about the actual bads that concern our team, because I think there's two glaring standouts for players that didn't play well in this game, and it's the French centre-back duo of Axel Disasi, who was playing at right back, and Wesley Fofana, who was playing in the central centre-back role. Now, I'm not going to put too much blame on them because they're both technically playing out of position here. Disasi more so than Fofana, because he's playing at right back and he's not got the most pace anyway. He needs that cover from Fofana. We saw a lot of just disconnect between these two in general. There's obviously the chance where the ball gets flicked over Disasi's head, and he's expecting Fofana to come over and cover for him, and he just doesn't. He just stands there and lets the player run down the wing, which is very silly. Obviously, Fofana giving that awful back pass to Sanchez, which inevitably gives them the penalty, which luckily Sanchez is able to save. And in general, these two, in comparison to the other centre-back that was on the pitch, and the other centre-backs, I should say, because when Tosin came off the bench, he looked very, very good too. In comparison to Levi Colwill, these guys looked absolutely lost, like genuinely lost, and it's getting worrying now that we've had so many different iterations of centre-backs, so many different combinations of centre-back pairings, and none of them seem to be working particularly well. And when we thought we were gaining momentum here, and we had this good partnership between Levi Colwill and Fofana, now it didn't really work in this game. And maybe that's down to the tactics, maybe that's down to obviously Levi being pushed out a bit wide and Fofana having to be the central centre-back, which he usually isn't. And again, Disasi playing as this almost like a right back at times, which isn't his position. So I can't fault them that much, but in general, objectively, their performances just weren't good. They were getting passed way too easily. They were giving the ball away. There was no composure on the ball from either of them. Except obviously, Colwill was the exception there. He had more composure than both of these two put together in this game. And in general, I said the defending just wasn't good enough. And maybe that's also just down to the midfield not helping them out too much. We obviously had to do a lot of rotation in midfield. We had no Lavia, no Enzo Fernandez, no Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, and we had to go into this game with Moises Caicedo as the only defensively minded player in our midfield at times. But yeah, the performance for these two wasn't good enough, and that's all I'm going to talk about in terms of bads for this game. I'm going to talk about positives now because I don't want to drag this on. I don't want to talk about results being poor and performances being poor. Let's talk about some good things. I spoke about him briefly there, so I'll mention him quickly here, but I'm going to be giving a good to a triangle here of Levi Colwill, Renato Vega, and Mark Cucurella. I think this left-hand side of our team, and how do I'm going to see like how I can connect these two. I'll connect them with an X. There we go. So this triangle of this left-hand side was one of the better parts of our defense in this game, because obviously, as I said, Colwill was much better in this. He was winning his aerial duels. He was being able to be smart on the ball and play it down the line when he needed to. On that left hand side, he was much more solid defensively. Cucurella, I thought, put in one of the best performances he's had in terms of winning aerial duels, which is very weird because, as I said in the preview, and most of the things which I said in the preview actually came true about the chaotic nature of this game, the directness of Bournemouth. We knew that they were going to play long balls into Evan Nielsen and places like that. We didn't expect them to play it into the channels as much, and this is something that was really funny, is that they kept long balling it down this left hand side where Cucurella was for Semenyo to try and battle him, and Cucurella was winning the aerial duel every single time, which is very, very surprising considering his small stature, and I think that he had a very, very good game. Not only in his defensive situation, but also trying to get forward as well. He was obviously operating in a slightly different role to what he's usually played. He wasn't playing as a left back per se. He was kind of playing in that left centre mid role, the opposite of what Gusto has been playing, and he really suited that role. If I'm being honest, he was popping up in almost like an inside 10 position a lot of the time when we were attacking, and also making overlaps in the second half specifically. Vega, another one who I thought had a bit of a slow start to the game, I will admit, and I even tweeted about it. I thought that he didn't get into the game very quickly, but as soon as he got into the game, he was very, very comfortable and he looked completely like a player that had been playing there for an extended period of time, playing in the central midfield, where he isn't completely natural. He is a natural left back, but obviously he can play in central midfield as well. He's obviously done both roles for Basel before we bought him, and for a very young kid, he looked completely comfortable. And as I said, he didn't really put much wrong, put a foot wrong really in the game, and he was again one of the good parts of our defense, because there wasn't very many of them, and I thought I'd have to point him out. Also, his celebration when the goal goes in, for him to jumping in the crowd and showing that passion that we don't have from a lot of our players in recent times, is good to see. Let's talk about the next player, who's also going to be another kind of defensive player. It's going to be for Robert Sanchez. This guy, I know that Sancho got given player of the match or man of the match or what have you. This guy was the real player of the match in this game. He bailed us out so well, not only just making save after save, being able to claim high balls very well in their set pieces and things like that. Obviously, he gave away the penalty, which again I don't think is his fault, because he literally just stood his ground and the players ran into him. I'm not really sure what he could do, and even in his interview after the game, he said, "I didn't really know what I could have done there. I just stood there," really, which is kind of funny. He pointed that out. But to make amends, as it were, and to save Fofana's blushes for that awful back pass, he saves the penalty, keeps us in the game, and of course, just again, he was just so good at shot stopping in this game, which is something we kind of don't really associate Sanchez with, and especially with saving penalties. We've never seen Sanchez doesn't really like actually save penalties, but he clearly had done his research in this game. He spoke about that in the interview too, and yeah, he was just an absolute brick wall. And I think that this is one of those performances where we're kind of used to having with teams against us, where we go against a team like, for example, Dean Henderson when we played Palace the other week, and we go against them and their goalkeeper just turned into Super Saiyans and you can't get past them. And Sanchez was the exact same in this game. He had a few moments where he couldn't really reach things, and we got a little bit lucky with a crossbar hit obviously early on in the game and shots going wide, but anything that went within the posts he was saving, he was claiming, and yeah, he looked very comfortable. And again, I don't think his distribution was particularly bad in this game either. Admittedly, we kind of played it short for the majority of the time rather than playing it long, but when he did have the chance to play it long, I think that he was relatively accurate. Very good performance from Rob, and hopefully he can follow it up with more. Now, I briefly mentioned him there, so I'm talking about him now. It was the official player of the match, and that's Jadon Sancho. I theorized in my preview that he would start. He did not start. And in a way, I kind of think that it was good that he didn't, because he was able to come off the bench under no pressure to perform and look like a completely changed player from the player that we've seen at Manchester United, that we saw again at Dortmund when he went on there on loan. And he looked the real deal. He looked like he was comfortable. He looked like he had the full support of the crowd too, which is really nice. The whole team in general, the away support was really good. Our away support always is really good, which is why I said in my preview I thought that us being away from home would actually give us a bit of a boost, and inevitably it did. Sancho was so good in this game at not only just keeping it simple at times, keeping the ball, not doing things too tricky, but then also knowing when to go forward, be that kind of dynamic winger that can take players on. We saw him nutmegging players. We saw him playing very well with the interplay with Cucurella on the left hand side, and in general just him being able to pick up the ball in positions out wide and be a threat always. I felt like every time he got the ball, we kind of had that anticipation that something was going to happen. And of course, obviously, he gets the all-important assist for Christopher Nkunku, who I'll also put in here because he's getting in here because he got a goal contribution, and obviously getting us the winning goal, he has to go in here. Getting the assist for Christopher Nkunku and completely nullifying all the hate watchers watching immediately that were trying to put him down, expecting him to go 007 again, like a lot of people were kind of theorizing. He completely silenced the doubters, and I think that, as I said, I kind of mentioned this in the preview, that I thought that now that he's got a settled home, players around him and fans that appreciate him and not going to get on his back immediately when things go wrong, hopefully he will be able to progress from here, and we get to see that Jadon Sancho that we saw at Dortmund. And this is just the beginning, because as I said, he came off the bench, he was a very, very impactful substitution. And Nkunku, again, getting the winning goal, very, very tidy finish. We know how good his finishing is in the box, and how, in general, how good he is when he gets the ball in the box in tight spaces. Very, very tidy finish, obviously wins us the game. Gets the balloons out for his son. Love that for Christopher Nkunku. And I want to leave that on, I want to leave that there with the last point I'm going to be putting is Enzo Maresca. I'm going to be putting him in medium because I don't think he got a lot of things right in this game. I think that a lot of things, for example, especially in the first half, could have gone better in terms of his tactics. But one thing I will credit him for was the fact that his every single substitution that he made was positive. Every single substitution that he made really kind of made a difference. Obviously, Tosin coming off the bench looked very, very good. And Nkunku and Sancho looked very, very good. Joao Felix had his moments as well. Enzo Maresca, despite not having the greatest game plan overall for this game and not performing particularly well, kind of bailed himself out by making very, very good substitutions. And that's despite having a limited bench, because two of our most important midfielders were ill for this game. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it for today. We move on to West Ham next week. I believe it's on Saturday kickoff. It's an early kickoff on 12:30, I think. So the preview for that will probably come out on the Friday beforehand. That'll be at 7 PM most likely, so look forward to that. I'm going to hit the outro. You guys have a good day. Peace. And that was just my Feeling Blue match review for this game. I hope to see you here for the next one. But if you can't wait until then, YouTube reckons you'll enjoy one of these two videos on screen in the meantime. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, in the rain or in the dry, keep that blue flag flying high. Come on, you Blues.